about it a lot recently, and I am going to change the way I approach quilting as a hobby. Here's the thing. Lately, I have felt really overwhelmed with the idea of needing to keep up with all of the trends and new fabric lines and subscription boxes that are out there for quilters. And that constant feeling of needing to have this or that has really made it hard for me to continue to enjoy this hobby that I love. Fact of the matter is that I just don't need to have the newest fabric line to make a beautiful quilt. In fact, I don't even need a fabric line to be able to make a beautiful quilt. I can use scraps of fabric to make a beautiful quilt. I can use recycled clothes or fabrics to make a beautiful quilt. We just don't need all of the newest things to be able to make something beautiful. I've been thinking back on my quilting journey a lot lately, and something that has really stood out to me is that when I've enjoyed quilting the most is when I've had the least amount of fabric. As I thought about it, I think that the reason I enjoyed that period the most is because the quilt I made was, or maybe just felt, a lot more special because of that. When I was making quilts back when I first started quilting, I had to either save up or use things that I repurposed to be able to make a quilt. And I didn't have tons of fabric laying around to choose from. I just had to be truly creative to be able to make that quilt. One of my first quilts was a jean quilt that I used, just some of my family's members' old jeans and cut squares out of it and sewed it together. And the reason I feel that that quilt is so creative is because I honestly didn't have much of an idea of what I was doing back then when I made this quilt. I just wanted to make a quilt. And so I cut out squares that contained seams on the jeans, contained pockets on the jeans, contained embroidery pieces on the jeans. And the quilt is just very, very cool. I decided on the back of the quilt to piece together bandanas for the backing. So the back of the quilt is actually a quilt as well. Now, because I didn't know what I was doing and because I had two quilts merged together and a lot of bulk from those jeans, and because this is an older quilt, the jeans are actually really thick and durable jeans. I had a lot of trouble trying to quilt it. I actually just had a basic Walmart sewing machine and I broke a lot of needles. So I decided to hand tie that quilt. But whenever anyone asks me about the quilt that I'm the most proud of, I look back on that quilt. I don't look back on a quilt that was curated with a fabric line that had the best materials or the newest materials. I think back on that quilt. And I think, one, it's because it was truly creative. And two, it was honestly an act of perseverance on my part to actually get it finished, because it was really hard to finish that, especially being so new to quilting. So I wonder what else I would come up with if I wasn't constantly consumed with thinking I need the best fabric or having the newest fabric or having the newest curated fabric lines out there. What would I make if I had to be truly creative and inspired? I haven't purchased a lot of fabric at all this year. And in fact, the only fabric that I have purchased has already been used in something. So I'm actually pretty proud of that. It is really hard though. I mean, I'm being serious. It is really hard to not be consumed by the things I see, because when I'm on here, when I'm on Pinterest or Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, a lot of what I see is quilt related. That is a lot of content that I enjoy and see as well. So I am constantly seeing people share their fabric hauls, their fabric stash, or unboxing a new subscription box. And it's hard to not feel like I want to have that too, that I'm missing out on something. So I completely understand and know how hard it is to not want a lot of the newest things. And honestly, it's hard too to not feel like I am part of the problem, because in all of my videos, and like in this video here, as I sit here, right behind me is a lot of fabric. So another thing that I've been thinking about lately is changing up my background behind me, moving around things in my sewing space and just having more of a neutral background, or hanging up some of the quilts that I've finished and have them back there rather than just stacks and stacks of fabric. So let me know what you think of that. Would you like to see a new background behind me? I really just want my space here on YouTube to be about teaching quilting, whether it's a technique or a tutorial for a new design I came up with. I want everyone to just be comfortable with where they are in their quilting journey. So be it, right? If your points aren't lining up, that's okay. If something's a little bit off here or there, that's okay. So be it. We don't need to have huge fabric stashes to make something beautiful. And that's just not realistic for everyone as well. So I don't want that to be the focus on my channel anymore. So I've thought about it a lot, and what I'm going to do is, one, to continue to go on the journey that I have so far this year of not buying anything new unless I really, really have to. I'm going to finish up projects that I already have in progress and, get those finished. But I'm also going to make the step to probably think about selling some of the quilts that I have. It's going to be really, really hard because I honestly have an attachment to a lot of the quilts I've made. And I've also made the decision that for each quilt that I decide to sell, I'm also going to donate a quilt. So I've donated quilts in the past, and it honestly feels really good to do that. So I want to make that step and make that commitment to do that so that I can feel a lot more comfortable in my space up here to be creative. I feel like with so much stuff stacked everywhere and crammed everywhere, it can be really overwhelming to come up here, and I want it to be a space that I feel happy in and want to come to and feel free to be creative. Aside from my own personal feelings about overconsumption, I'm honestly also kind of worried about the environmental impact this hobby has as well. New fabric lines are constantly being released, and they're really smart about it, right? Because when they're released, they're only available for a short amount of time, and when they sell out, they don't release more of that fabric line. So you feel like you have to purchase it right away or you're going to miss out on it. And then a month or two later, a new fabric line is released and the same cycle happens. And in that time period, we may not have even made a complete new quilt or even touched that fabric. I'm in a lot of different sewing groups and forums, and I follow a lot of different quilting channels. And something I see from time to time is this phrase, "She who dies with the most fabric wins." And that just honestly gives me so much anxiety because, when I die, I don't want all of this stuff to be a burden to my children. I don't want them to have to figure out what to do with all of, my fabric or all of the quilts that I have stacked everywhere. I have so many quilts and I have so many unfinished quilts, and they each have so many quilts already that I've made for them specifically with, designs they've picked out, with fabrics they've picked out, and they honestly don't need 15 more quilts each. And I don't want them to feel guilty about not wanting any of these other quilts that I have. I think when we think of textiles, we often think of just clothing and the impact fast fashion has had. And going into a thrift shop and seeing all of the clothing stacked everywhere. And we know that a lot of that clothing is going to get trashed, or even worse, if you know, you know. And I don't think we always think of fabric in that same way, you know, like what's happening to all this fabric that we see. It can be really hard to think about, honestly. And I do wonder, if we went back to quilts being made out of recycled fabrics, if our little hobby would suddenly be part of the solution. If you can't relate to any of this at all, that is okay. It isn't meant to be an attack on anyone at all. If you want to buy the fabric, buy the fabric. I just know that for me, when looking back, when I had a minimal stash, I was the happiest. I was much more creative, and I was enjoying this hobby of mine a lot more. That seems to be what really worked the best for me, and that's what I'm going to start leaning back into. Let me know your thoughts on overconsumption as well. Is this something that you have maybe thought about lately or in the past? Or am I maybe just having a midlife crisis? That could be it. My daughter is graduating soon and heading off to college, so it could be it. I don't know. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.